And good morning, everyone. How are you? Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and you will be with me from 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. And this is going to be also simulcast on the Let the Truth Be Told network. We will soon be launching our whole network so you can actually capture the full episode on Roku, soon to be on Apple and also Amazon TV, which is called Fire TV. We will also have an app that will be just, updated and distributed so you guys can actually get the show on the go along with some of our other shows. I've also been featured on the Let the Truth Be Told podcast. So you'll also be able to catch me over there sometimes with Pastor David Lowry. We also have Numbers USA that will be joining us with Andre Barnes. So I'm really excited about this new network that we're launching. And, you can actually download the app currently. We do have some shows that have been recorded that we've uploaded to the network, and it's called Let the Truth Be Told Network. So, again, join us. And I'm just looking forward to growing with everybody. So, here we are this morning. Let's get into it. It's Wednesday, the first Wednesday in May. Can you guys believe it? We are in May already. You turn around and you blink, you set your New Year's resolutions, and it's almost time for the kids to be out of school for the summer. So, for all of those who are graduating this year, congratulations. I'm so proud of everybody who's made it through, whether you're graduating from the sixth grade. In some states, they still do that. And I know in some states, they graduate from the fifth grade going into middle school, sixth, seventh, and eighth. So to those graduates, congratulations. High school graduates, congratulations. And college graduates, congratulations. I know for our college graduates, I want to give them a little bit more love because they are actually, looking to go into the workforce or actually go on to further pursue degrees that require maybe a master's or even further, if someone's becoming an attorney, they have to go to law school afterwards after receiving their bachelor's degree. So, we're praying for you guys. Congratulations, whatever efforts you're deciding to go into. But I want to encourage our graduates right now, because even if you're in high school and you're not intending to go to college, that's fine. You can always get a certificate in a field. I'm a paralegal. So, I personally have a degree as a paralegal, but you can get a certificate as a paralegal and work for a law firm. And you might later on want to pursue a career as an attorney. So just know that there are many paths to get to where your heart is desiring to go. And just know if you find something that you enjoy, you will never work a day in your life. There are some others, and I know I'm going a little bit of a tangent, but I listen to the news a lot. So this is something that's really close to me. And I also want to encourage those who may be saddled with college debt. And, it does happen. It happens to all of us. Really, take a pause, look at where you're at, and really look at what your degree can do for you. Some degrees, I know people say, oh, they're useless or this or that. But you know what? It's not useless. You do have a tool and a resource. You did spend that time gaining that education. So don't just throw it away. Really take stock in who you are and what you bring to the table. You're important and you're valued, and what you do in contributing to the overall society is important. So I don't want people out there to feel that they're unimportant. I definitely don't want our new graduates to feel discouraged about the marketplace, because guess what? Even if you don't find something that suits you, then start your own business. You know, Even in its smallest measurement, you might be a wonderful designer, but your degree might be in a different field. Take what you've learned from that degree and apply it to design and come up with something new. You know, the wonderful thing that we have here in the United States is we have the freedom to express. We have the freedom to start a business if we so choose. And you have resources out there like the Small Business Administration. You also have other state resources. So I just encourage you guys to don't get down, don't get discouraged. I know the news can sound like the bad news all the time. And it can just seem like, everybody just wants to hide into a corner, curl up in a ball and be like, I don't want to deal with this. But there are so many opportunities out there for young people and for people even my age. And so, like, again, I'm just saying, don't get discouraged. Just take a pause and really take stock in what you bring to the table and then bring it, bring your best. So I hope that was an encouragement to anyone out there listening this morning. We are going live via YouTube and X, formerly known as Twitter. And the recording, if you want to watch it later, or if you didn't catch the live, you can always catch our recording at Let the Truth Be Told Network, now available on Roku, any of the Roku devices, or if you have a Roku TV, you can utilize the app there. Okay, so with that, let's get into the news. All right, you guys. Got some good stuff this morning, and some not so good stuff, right? But we'll get there. So one of the news programs or news outlets I was talking about yesterday is called All Sides Media. Well, All Sides, sorry, not All Sides Media, it's All Sides. It's a website, and it disseminates the news, and it gives you the left, right, and center. I really like it. And the one good thing I like about it is that it is crowdsourced and funded, which means they don't have an affiliate program, but they do have an investor program. So you can actually invest in All Sides and be a part of this media outlet that is disseminating the news online. I think it's a fabulous idea. I like the business model, and that's why I'm promoting it here on my show. And I'm also going to be utilizing it on my show, as in this morning. So let's get into some of the news here. I've told you guys, you're going to have to deal with me because it's just me. Yep, I'm delivering the news this morning. So you're going to have to deal with just little old me figuring out all this wonderfulness. And so what I wanted to look at was this headline that came up. The FDA, they have appointed a COVID response critic, Dr. Vinay Prasad, to oversee vaccine programs. So, I know there's been a lot of talk about how vaccines, and it is a big deal because we've gone from, I want to say when I was a youngster, I would say I might have gotten maybe 10 shots over my lifetime, and that included any boosters that I needed. And now the schedule is up to like 92 shots, which is crazy. It's like you would think with the more technology we have, the fewer shots you would need, right? Because we should be eating better. We should have less chemicals in our food. We should have different alternatives of medicine outside of being vaccinated, right? And vaccination should really be something that we look to boost our immune systems, not tear it down. And so we're not there. I would like to be where I just spoke of, but we're not there. We are, unfortunately, we've got a schedule, and we're giving children almost 100 shots, saying that it's boosting their immune system. But unfortunately, some of these kids end up with autism. They end up with autoimmune diseases, some of them permanent, some of them that they can, get and work through as they get older. Some people end up becoming more allergic or sensitive to certain types of foods. So again, with all the technology we have, it seems like we should have fewer, not more. But let's get more into this story. I'm going to check out the center. I'm going to check out Newsweek. Because again, on all sides, you get to see who's on the left, who's on the right, and who's in the center, which I really like that um, positioning. So the Food and Drug Administration has selected Dr. Vinay Prasad, who was critical of some COVID-19 public health measures, to lead its program on vaccines and biological drugs. Okay. Well, he looks pretty nice so far. Look, so far so good. We don't know yet. But this is the other thing I like about all sides. So it gives you a summary. And so as you can see, you get the details, the context, the key quotes, and how the media covered it. So it says some outlets like Newsweek, center bias Axios, that leans left, framed the pick as the choice of Kennedy, who's RFK, and CNN left Washington Examiner noted that biotech stocks were down significantly after the announcement. So, it's interesting how you wouldn't think vaccines would affect the market in any way, but you have to remember a lot of these businesses, they are paid a lot of money from the federal government, by the way, our tax dollars, to come up with these actual injections that we have, the vaccines that we have. So these companies that are on the stock exchange, by the way, so you've got what, i.e. Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, you also have Moderna, you also have Pfizer, right? No, just to name a few, and Merck. So these are some of the companies that have invested in developing vaccines, promoting vaccine use, right? And their biotechnology, that's something new that came around. And when it's probably was available before, I'm sure, COVID-19. But I think a lot of people really started to hear that more and more, biotechnology, as opposed to just getting a normal vaccine. Because why would you be putting technology in my body? Right? I'm organic. I'm not a robot. But that's the point, right? We might do a show where we talk about nanobots and nanotechnology and how it's been, kind of infused into vaccinations and different medical uh, devices, procedures, medications that we take. But that's where that's coming from. But their stocks were down, so, in my opinion, that means some of the investors might be in fear that they might be subject to lawsuit. That's one. Or also, will they lose their contracts with the government making these vaccines? Or would they lose money, right? If they can't use certain vaccines, right? Because there are vaccines that we actually have here in the United States that in other countries, they've banned them. So the HPV vaccine, for example, we use that here in the United States, but they've banned it in countries like Germany. So they won't give it to their citizens, but we're giving it to ours. And those are things we need to ask a question on. It's like, well, if a whole nother country is banning it, why are we using it here? And why is it being allowed, right? Where's the FDA? And those are the questions that we're going to be asking here on Unfiltered Vision News. So the details of this particular story, as we're learning about this new FDA confirmed individual, Prasad is a professor at the University of California, San Francisco, who has also made a name for himself as a writer on Substack and commentator on X. Prasad criticized government responses to COVID and questioned whether young males should receive the shot due to showing a higher rate of myocarditis, but called the COVID shot itself a miraculous life-saving advance. So you would think, well, he's putting it down for one thing, but he's touting it as another. And I think that's where we're learning about the biotechnology, because it's mRNA. which is modified RNA. Now they have mRNA, and then they have a different type of RNA that's more a little bit more natural. It's not modified, and it doesn't have the technologies that the mRNA has that led to, unfortunately, some people getting myocarditis. But what he's saying is there probably are some good aspects of RNA that we could use in a positive way, but there is still that downside of myocarditis. So this is interesting to see that there's somebody who, they have an honest view. It on one hand it could be bad, on one hand it could be good. And I'm glad we have somebody at least that is able to ask the questions and have the conversation, as opposed to being one-sided or the other, you know. And so for context, the FDA falls under the jurisdiction of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has been an outspoken critic of several vaccine and other drugs in the past. Prasad's appointment was announced to staff by FDA head Dr. Marty Makary, and he replaces Dr. Peter Marks, who helped lead the program for 13 years. Prasad has previously criticized Marks in his writings, calling him anti-data and a bobblehead doll that just stamps approval. So now we know that this is an individual. He's going to dig in. He's going to get in there, and he's not just going to, give rubber stamped comments. He's actually going to do the job, which is what we want from someone, right? Marx said, "It has become clear that the truth and transparency are not desired by the secretary, but rather he wishes subservient confirmation of his misinformation and lies." McCary reportedly wrote, "Prasad brings a great set of skills, energy, and competence to the FDA, and I know that he is eager to begin immersing himself in the important work of CBER and the agency as a whole." I'm not sure what CBER is, so I'll have to look up that acronym. They love to throw acronyms around. But so that's interesting how, these are two people being replaced in the FDA, Marks, Dr. Peter Marks, and Makary. And Makary is, very encouraged by this person, but Marks isn't. But, due to the earlier remarks that you heard from Prasad, he was very critical of Marx. So it's, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out, and how well Mr. Prasad is going to do. So again, he's been a critic of the food, both the pharmaceutical industry and the Food and Drug Administration. He has been appointed to lead the FDA's program overseeing vaccines and biotechnology drugs. Okay, the FDA Commissioner, Dr. Marty Makary, announced a decision in a message to staff on Tuesday, lauding Prasad's long and distinguished history in medicine. The FDA falls under the guidance of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So I'm really excited to see this particular article. And as you can read, it wasn't one-sided. I mean, and I know this is just a blurb. This isn't like the whole story, but we're getting enough from the commentary, right, that was given on the story, and enough context to understand what we're dealing with. This is what I like about All Sides, just breaking down this little bit. So the other thing that I noticed about All Sides is that it lets you know if there's a possible paywall. So if you are not necessarily a subscriber of Newsweek, you can't see the entire article. And that happens, everybody's got to make their money somehow on the internet by creating a situation where you got to pay for the content to really see what's out there. But I like how All Sides gives you the different perspectives and how you can see things in a different way. And with that, we're going to take a short break, and I'll see you guys on the other side.
At All Sides, we believe unbiased news doesn't exist. To get more clicks and make more money, media outlets often report news with a left, right, or sensational slant, either to suit their own agenda or because by telling us what we want to hear, we'll come back for more. Several news outlets in the center do a good job of portraying both sides equitably, but for the most part, American news media is biased. Bias isn't necessarily a bad thing. The key is to get multiple perspectives. But making matters worse, social media and internet search results are heavily filtered, showing us the most popular opinion or results that match our preferences and make us happy. That means we're all living in filter bubbles, where we're only exposed to viewpoints we already agree with, making us less informed and less tolerant of different people and ideas. At All Sides, we give bias ratings for hundreds of media outlets. By freeing people from filter bubbles and providing different perspectives, we can all be better equipped to understand the world and each other. So how do we do it? All Sides has created a patented, fair, transparent process to rate the media bias of hundreds of news outlets and writers. We assess each media source and rate them as far left, center, lean right, or far right, allowing you to quickly identify different perspectives. All Sides is constantly evolving our media bias engine. The more you participate, the better our ratings will be, and the better our news coverage will be. Go to allsides.com to get involved.
Hey guys, and we are back. Thank you so much for, again, joining the broadcast this morning. And, I don't have a producer. So if you are joining me from X or joining me from YouTube, thank you so much for joining me this morning. One day I will have like a producer and I'll be able to be like, hey, thanks. I see you in the chat. Hey, thank you. I'm giving you the shout out. So I'm just giving everybody a shout out because I can't see that information yet. I haven't gotten that far into technology. I'm just doing well just to be on here with you engaging this morning. So again, good morning from Unfiltered Vision News. And I'm so glad that you guys have decided to join me this morning. We were just talking about the FDA appointment of Dr. Vinay Prasad, and he was confirmed to oversee the vaccine program. Now, there's a little bit more news I wanted to get into this morning. I wanted to check out the Indian-Pakistan tensions that are escalating. And this is really sad. We've got so much going on around the world. We've got Ukraine and Russia. We've got different conflicts in Israel, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And now we've got India has bombed Pakistan in response to an April massacre of 26 tourists. So, wow, that's crazy. India launched strikes against tourist infrastructure in Pakistan early on Wednesday in retaliation for a massacre. So, I know, does anybody out there really think that violence is going to get you what you want, right? Sometimes you do have to use violence in certain circumstances when you're defending yourself. But is more bloodshed going to help the blood that has already been shed? That's what I'm saying. The details of this is India said its Operation Sindoor targeted 9 Pakistani terrorist sites, including some allegedly connected to last month's attack. So it's alleged, right? They haven't confirmed or denied. So Pakistan said 6 locations were hit, including mosques, but denied any were militant camps. Pakistan also claimed to have shot down 5 jets and a drone. Officials in Pakistan said at least 19 were killed, including civilians. So, a little bit more context. In April, a terror attack that India blamed on Pakistani based terrorists killed 26 in Kashmir, most of whom were male Indian tourists. Kashmir is a disputed region that has been a point of contention between the Hindu majority India and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan since they gained independence in 1947. Sindoor is the red power many Hindu women wear on their heads before marriage. And I think that's that little dot that's right there in the center of their heads. And so, let's look how the media covered it. So, coverage of the escalation varied across news outlets. CNN, leaning left, highlighted conflicting narratives between India and Pakistan and the potential correlation between Sindoor and women left widowed after the April massacre. Reuters, which is center, included a section on how stocks and air travel were affected after Wednesday's attack. Fox News, which is to the right, gave details on the April massacre and emphasized India's blaming of Pakistani terror groups. So, as you can see, those different perspectives. This is why I'm really enjoying all sides, because we can see all sides at the same time and really gather that information as opposed to cherry picking. That's how you get the left, right, and center of the news. And then in the Guardian, they also shared that India conducted missile strikes on multiple targets in Pakistan, including areas of Pakistani administered Kashmir, in response to a recent terrorist attack that killed 26 Indian tourists. Pakistan condemned the strikes as an act of war and reported shooting down 5 Indian jets. This marks the most severe escalation between the two nuclear armed nations in over 2 decades. So they've been at peace for roughly 20 years, right? And now we got this. And this happened April 20th. So roughly, it was about two, no more than 3 weeks ago that this occurred. But what we don't hear about is, were there any talks? Did any of the government officials, before they decided to just go ham and we're just going to bomb you because you did this, we're just going to retaliate by actually putting more people's lives at risk? Are we going to talk this through to see, can we isolate and find the individuals who've actually done this and bring them to justice, as opposed to, like I said, putting more innocent lives at risk as you're going back and forth? A lot of times, and this is just my opinion, when we're looking at war, some people don't look at the casualties involved because they're so caught up in wanting dominance over another region or power in another position. Why don't you think about the people on the ground that have to participate in this? You're asking somebody to give up their life so you can gain power, right? And that's what we have to look at. The loss of life. How many innocent people are going to get caught up in this if we bomb this area? Yeah, terrorists may be there, but can we get the innocent people out and isolate the terrorists, right? Before we just start bombing areas and destroying things. And you may have killed, maybe 7 or 8 families. We don't know. And these are parts of these conflicts when they're talking about, yeah, we shot down all these planes and we shot down a drone. Okay, things fall out of the sky when you shoot them down. I'm just saying. And there's going to be, shrapnel everywhere. Did you consider what you were doing beforehand? And a lot of people might say, of course, they've considered this, they war gamed this, whatever. But sometimes just because you've war gamed it on a table or in a computer module, it plays out in real life a little differently. And we need to make sure that we are taking stock of human life before we just start shooting everybody down because we think it suits us, right? Another story that I really like to get into is, let's see, there's so many things to get into, but I guess not Xi Jinping. Well, we could cover that if I can find it in here. Let's see. And Xi Jinping, I guess he's visited Russia amidst global tensions. Oops, I did not spell visits right. There it is. Okay. Well, let's see what's going on with China and Russia. Now, a lot of people might immediately say BRICS, right? Because, and for those of you who might not be familiar with BRICS, it is, what's it? Brazil, Russia, India, China, Africa. I forget the S, because the S was like Africa and South Africa, but they kind of changed it. So I think it's just BRICS. And what that is, it's supposed to be a collective currency of all of those nations. So a lot of times when China is going to talk to Russia, people get kind of freaked out, right? As they should. You know, these are definitely two superpowers that we want to stay measured with, right? We want to make sure that we're good. But it says that Chinese President Xi Jinping will make a state visit to Russia from the 7th, which is today. All right, well, let's get into it. So Chinese President Xi Jinping will make a state visit to Russia from the 7th in response to Russian President Vladimir Putin's invitation. President Xi Jinping will make a state visit to Russia from the 7th to the 10th and attend an event in Moscow to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory in the war against the control state-run war against state control. Okay. State-run Xinhua News Agency reported on the 4th. President Xi will have strategic communication with President Putin on the development of China-Russia relations under the new situation in a series. Ooh, this is getting juicy, y'all. I kind of like it. I was like, this is getting kind of good. Let's read more to see where this is going. Because I know, a lot of times with, how should I say, the current not news cycle, but I should say the current governmental structures, we see that there is a concern about this particular, how should I say it, this particular relationship. Yeah, that's how best to put it. This particular relationship is kind of freaking everybody out. They're like, wow, if you two become friends, what's going to happen to the rest of us? Right. And at that juncture, I'm like, okay, then everybody needs to sit down at the table and discuss this. The United Nations was put together initially to have good relationships amongst all countries. And then, of course, we got people in there that they're just like, well, we just want to rule the whole world and just dominate everybody in every country and just let no one else have rights but the people that are here. It's like, no, don't do that. But at least, the United Nations needs to get back to its original intent, which was to bring other nations to the table so they could talk and discuss. And if there was a conflict between other nations, they were all there to see how they could come to a resolution. So we don't have world wars, right? And so we have a clear talks across the table and across the aisle with a lot of these major superpowers. In between China and Russia, they are large countries and they could be, considered superpowers in their own right. So let's pick the story back up. So President Putin so President Xi will have strategic communication with President Putin on the development of China-Russia relations under the new situation and a series of important international regional issues during the state visit to Russia, a Chinese foreign ministry spokesman said on the website shortly after Xinhua News Agency reported. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys that are joining me live. And again, thank you so much for joining me live. Like I said, get this a little bit bigger, even for myself, right? So China and Russia will strengthen close cooperation on multilateral platforms such as the United Nations, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the BRICS, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, uniting many global souths collectively referred to as emerging and developing countries located mainly in the southern hemisphere, and leading global governance to go in the right direction, the spokesman said. He added, "We will oppose unilateralism and bullying behavior under a clear banner and promote equal and orderly globalization and universally beneficial economic globalization." Now, here's my thing about globalization. It sounds great, right? It sounds fantastic. It's like, all right, let's get everybody to the table. Let's work this out, right? You've got this resource over here. I've got that resource over there. Let's just swap things. Let's come together on the table. It sounds great. But what's been happening is that we have certain individuals that are like, well, I just want to dominate everything. And I want to rule over everyone. And I want to do my thing. And you guys are just going to have to capitulate to me and do what I say. Or I'm taking my marbles and I'm leaving. That's it. Fat. A lot of people might be sitting there laughing and giggling, going, I know somebody who talks like that. Well, I know why he's talking like that. And he's talking like that so people listen to us so that we can have a larger conversation, very similar to what Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are having. They all need to sit at the table together. My concern about globalism is what it has done, especially to the United States. And what it has done is we've become a service economy as opposed to a manufacturing economy. We don't make things anymore. And the things that we do make, it's from foreign companies coming here, using our manufacturing facilities to sell us products, right? And to also distribute those products to other countries. But we need to start making things. We need to have the actual companies that develop the microchips that go into the cars as opposed to relying on Taiwan. Like I said, globalism is great when you have relationships, but you shouldn't be dependent on other countries to the point where it falls apart. COVID showed us that it did, and everything kind of bottomed out when, the supply chains got thrown off. And, a lot of our inflation is because those supply chains, were derailed. And now we've had to go back through those growing pains of building everything back up. But let's just say in a better world, we would have had backup systems here in the United States, and we didn't have to rely on other countries to get products to us, where we could have said, yeah, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, the products that we have here, but at least we can make them here. At least we can distribute them here, and we can distribute them to other countries that need these products as we're able to. We weren't in that position, and we're paying for it. So again, globalization, it sounds good, but we really have to be careful how we move forward going into the next 4 years with the Trump administration. We need to make sure that we are focused on building things and manufacturing things and not just being a service country. So, reading on, I think that was it. Yeah, that was it for the story. So, universally beneficial economic globalization. Again, I don't know how beneficial economic globalization can be. It can be, but like I said, we need to be, as a country, more interdependent as opposed to dependent. And globalization creates dependencies that, as we saw over COVID, can really destroy countries. It can be very devastating. All right, so we're going to take a short break, and I'll see you guys right after the break.
All Sides has created a patented, fair, transparent process to rate the media bias of hundreds of news outlets and writers. We assess each media source and rate them as far left, center, lean right, or far right, allowing you to quickly identify different perspectives. All Sides uses many methodologies to determine bias, including the Blind Bias Survey, gathering people from all parts of the political bias spectrum and having them read and rate articles blindly, without telling them who wrote the article or which media outlet it came from. Then we take the average bias rating of several articles from a given media outlet for our final bias rating. Another powerful method we use is the editorial review. Focus groups of people with multiple political viewpoints who review the works of a media outlet and come to a consensus on its bias. We also look at credible third-party data, including academic research by top universities. Finally, what you say matters. We gather community feedback on our site every day, including hundreds of thousands of votes on our bias ratings. Our final bias ratings aren't determined by these votes, so they can't be gamed or falsified by any group. But we do analyze those votes for input and look for warning signs that our current bias ratings might be off. All Sides is constantly evolving our media bias engine. The more you participate, the better our ratings will be, and the better our news coverage will be. Go to allsides.com to get involved.
And we are back. Good morning, everyone. You have reached us at Unfiltered Vision News. Thank you for everyone who has tuned in and is listening this morning to me ranting and going on about a lot of things. But yes, Unfiltered News. We are new to the news space, and we're giving you the news from an unfiltered perspective. So the one thing I want to share with you guys is, I will do my best to always make sure I'm telling the truth to the best of my ability and reporting the news honestly. And I want us to do this together because a lot of times, things are going on and people want to give a slant to the news to become tribal, right? Where the news should be just information. And when we're consuming this information, we need to make sure that we're consuming good information so that as we share it with our family and friends, to the best of our ability, we're giving them information that's good and it's clean and it's actually going to build people up and with their knowledge base, right? And not tear people down with their knowledge base. We want people to be able to truly give an account. Now, I'm really trying to look at this tariff situation with Donald Trump. NPR has reported that the Trump administration's tariffs aim to boost domestic manufacturing. The Trump administration has implemented new tariffs intended to incentivize domestic production and reduce reliance on foreign goods. A recent poll indicates that 80% of Americans believe the country would benefit from increased manufacturing within the U.S. Now, I know you guys don't see that on my screen right now because I'm sharing All Sides. I've done some notes, in different places here and there. And I was actually trying to find that story here on All Sides. So bear with me. I'm going to find it. But again, the tariff situation is interesting because, and I'm going to get into that at the top of the hour, just how tariffs were used from the inception of America, and how it was a benefit and how it's evolved since America's inception. So we need to, dig in a little bit, understand when, the word tariffs comes up. So we're not, you know, flailing around like fish out of water going, oh no, they said the tariff word. What are we going to do? You'll be better equipped. And that's what I want for you guys. I don't want you to feel unequipped with the news. I know that might sound interesting, it might sound strange, but I really want you to be equipped when it comes to the news. I want you to have that information, not so much like information in your back pocket, but that information where if you have a conversation with somebody, you can hold your own. That's all I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? You can have that intellectual conversation. I'm sure a lot of us have seen those man on the street interviews, and they can, wow, they can get interesting, right? It's like, oh, well, how do you feel about this? And they'll start, and then they'll be like, and like, yeah, yeah. But let's just check this one out. Trump signs order in bid to boost pharma manufacturing in the United States. So let's check this out. So this would be pharmaceutical manufacturing. So that goes back to um, injections, right? And I want to say he hired some gentleman. I don't know what his name was. It looked like he had a lot of plastic surgery, though. That's just me tangenting for a second. But he was talking about developing a vaccine that would actually be able to pinpoint, like if you have cancer or different things like that. And it would be more so a vaccine suited to you as opposed to just anyone, which I don't like it. I don't like injections personally. When I was born, I was born with a lot of, different issues that I had to, go through. But there were people born before me and people born before those people. And I don't think they were born into a world where people were just injecting them with medicine. And again, like I said, with all the technology we have, why are we injecting people more now than we have in the past? And those people, they live pretty decent lives, right? Not everybody lived a long, long time, but they had pretty decent lives. Like I said, we are living longer because people are eating better and they're doing things better, but they're forced to because, some manufacturers have been allowed to do things that aren't in the best interest, I should say, of the American people. So we're looking at Trump signs an order in mid ongoing anticipation. Oh, okay. Making sure you guys can still see this. Amid ongoing anticipation over tariffs on pharmaceuticals, President Trump on Monday, so that would have been the 5th, signed an executive order designed to lower regulatory hurdles and make it faster for drug companies to manufacture their products in the United States. The move also includes plans to place more pressure on foreign drug makers to comply with control inspections. At the top of the list is to mandate the Food and Drug Administration to reduce the amount of time it takes to approve domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing plants. The agency is being directed to eliminate duplicative. Okay, got to get more of the story. All right, so we have duplicative information information. And I can see that with the FDA. I'm a paralegal. And so I've actually had the honor, I should say, even though it might not seem an honor, to work on very large cases involving pharmaceutical devices and also medications. And so I've actually seen some of the documents and letters from the FDA and how they work with these various companies on how to either alter, pull the devices or medications off the shelves and reformulate, or maybe permanently pulling this their products off of the shelves for the sake of the health of the general welfare and public. So this does happen where they have to, go through it and redo things. So let me catch up to where we were. We want to comply with quality control inspections. At the top of this list is a mandate for the Food and Drug Administration to reduce the amount of time it takes to approve domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing plants. The agency is being directed, let me get this a little bit bigger, is being directed to eliminate duplicative and unnecessary requirements, streamline reviews, and work with domestic manufacturers to provide support before facilities start functioning. Goals were not mentioned in the order. So they didn't give the benchmarks of how they're going to get there, but this is what they want the outcome to look like. So at the same time, the Environmental Protection Agency was ordered to accelerate its approval of construction of facilities for manufacturing medicines, active pharmaceutical ingredients, and new raw materials. And federal agencies issuing permits for a domestic manufacturing facility must designate a single point of contact to coordinate permits with support from the White House Office of Management and Budget. So that's where we're going to leave this. Here's my thing. Okay, so you want to, take down a little bit of the red tape. You want to accelerate. So again, like I was saying before, we're not so dependent on other countries for medicines, because there are some people that have to take medicines. But we never really talk about how we got here. The chemicals that are in the food and the water right now, and fixing that, right? We want to make medications faster, but we don't want to say, how did we get here? What's the problem with our food and our water that we are so sick as a country that you even have to do this, that you even have to put things in place to accelerate manufacturing pharmaceutical companies? Again, these companies are going to make billions of dollars. They're going to make it through governmental supplements like Medicare, Medicaid, and a lot of these companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield, most insurance companies, they also work with the federal government to accept certain types of insurances, right, in their facilities, that the doctors, have certain types of insurances that they will take so that they're making money on the back end. And that's how I'm seeing this. This is all about money. It's not really about making America healthy again. I know, Maha, that's your thing. And RFK, I want to see you do amazing. And I actually had the privilege of meeting RFK Jr., and he has such a passion for health and wellness. So what I'm looking forward to in all of these manufacturing companies being built is to really see more holistic products come out of this. And I know, just reading this, it's like, okay, we want to speed up the pharmaceutical manufacturing plants. I'm hoping that some of these manufacturing plants are based on holistic products, you know, things that can help us, like I should say the ingredients in green tea, you know, that can actually boost your immune system without too much caffeine, or looking at, you know, some of natural foods that can help our digestive system without looking for a chemical to replace that. That's what I would really like to see with a lot of these pharmaceutical manufacturing plants. So if there's anybody out there listening who is in that space, you know, see what's available in the federal government, you know, because a lot of times now this is coming back to government contracting, and they may be looking for you. They may be looking for companies that want to get into this health space to further help individuals. You know, they have come up with new cancer treatments that are less evasive than going the route of having to, you know, have someone do gosh, the name is escaping me, the chemotherapy, which, you know, people have, you know, their hair falls out and it's radiation poisoning, really, to kill cancer. And some people, you know, they have a worse time with that. Well, you know, now we have the opportunity to change that and say, well, what other options are there out there for people that are getting cancer? But let's go back to the root cause. Why do we have so many more people with cancer? And I'm really grateful that RFK Jr., that he's in the space and he's saying, hey, we need to get rid of some of these seed oils. We need to get rid of some of these dyes that are used in cereals and other products that we have here in the United States that are, again, banned in other countries, but we're utilizing them here. So I'm so grateful that he is utilizing his role to fix a lot of what can be fixed, because that's what the FDA should be doing. The FDA should be protecting us. The FDA should not be protecting companies to damage us, right? But it becomes a whole life cycle, because see, that same company that manufactures the chips manufactures the pill once you get sick, right? So they're making money on both ends. And then they might also have a stake in the insurance company that the government subsidizes. Just saying. It's a whole ecosystem. And we need to break down the monopoly that's going on in our country. Somebody said, I've heard it said, that we have a sad diet, the standard American diet. Sad. And it is. It is very sad. You know, we don't get enough fruits and vegetables, and the ones we get, are they genetically modified or are they organic? Or are they saying organic and they're still genetically modified and we just don't know? Right? I encourage you guys to, you know, find a farmer's market in your area. Find somebody who has local chickens and get your eggs from there, where you're knowing that, you know, if those chickens aren't filled up with a whole bunch of GMOs. I'm very grateful to live here in the state of Georgia, where, you know, I kind of live in a rural community. It's not super rural, but I live in a rural area where there is a local farmer's market. There are people that sell eggs that, you know, where they've raised up their chickens to sell eggs. And I just want to encourage everybody, yeah, it's time for us to, you know, really take care of ourselves, and also encourage our federal government to take care of us, right? To make sure that we are ingesting what we need and that we're getting what we need as a country, and that we can not so much rely on them to help us, but, you know, we elected you. We put you in office to assist, right? We put you in office to make sure that if your job is to keep the food chain safe, that's what we want you to do. That's the expectation. The expectation isn't going to go down. And we'll just throw our hands up like, oh, well, this is how it is. No, you need to do your job. Because when you look up for reelection, you know, we might be looking at you sideways if you did something to harm us. Whereas we want to really be able to look at you and say, thank you for the job that you're doing. Right now, I would say that RFK, he's doing an excellent job because, he's not just talking it, he's walking it. He's making sure that people are implementing it. And it's a big job being the HHS secretary. A lot of people think, oh, well, he's just in charge of the border. He's got the FDA, he's got the border, he's got a lot of things that fall under HHS that you would never even think of. But he's doing a great job making sure that America is healthy. So Maha, go, go, go. But we want to make sure that with the mass development of these pharmaceutical companies and the fast tracks of any type of medications, that they are to the benefit and not the detriment of the American people. And with that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into Wednesday, Women and Wellness. Thanks for joining me, guys.
At All Sides, we believe unbiased news doesn't exist. To get more clicks and make more money, media outlets often report news with a left, right, or sensational slant, either to suit their own agenda or because by telling us what we want to hear, we'll come back for more. Several news outlets in the center do a good job of portraying both sides equitably, but for the most part, American news media is biased. Bias isn't necessarily a bad thing. The key is to get multiple perspectives. But making matters worse, social media and internet search results are heavily filtered, showing us the most popular opinion or results that match our preferences and make us happy. That means we're all living in filter bubbles, where we're only exposed to viewpoints we already agree with, making us less informed and less tolerant of different people and ideas. At All Sides, we give bias ratings for hundreds of media outlets. By freeing people from filter bubbles and providing different perspectives, we can all be better equipped to understand the world and each other. So how do we do it? All Sides has created a patented, fair, transparent process to rate the media bias of hundreds of news outlets and writers. We assess each media source and rate them as far left, center, lean right, or far right, allowing you to quickly identify different perspectives. All Sides is constantly evolving our media bias engine. The more you participate, the better our ratings will be, and the better our news coverage will be. Go to allsides.com to get involved.
Sorry, that was such an abrupt cut. Like I've told you guys, I am it. I am the producer, the talent, and it's just me, Women in Wellness. And every Wednesday, my plan for this segment is to have someone on that I know or someone that I want to highlight in our community. So if there's anybody that you know that you would like for me to highlight in this segment, please, go ahead and reach out, and you can email me at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com. That's unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com. It's in a little ticker below, or you can reach out to me on YouTube. I'm also on X and Instagram. So with those platforms, and even TikTok, you can reach out to me there and just leave me a message and say, these are some topics I think you might want to cover on Wednesday, or this is someone who is in the wellness space that you may want to cover. But this segment is really looking at women and just how much, we need to just talk about some of the issues that we have as women, whether that's spiritual, mental, physical. Summer's coming up, so everybody's trying to get bikini ready for if you're going on a cruise or you're just at home, or, I think it's just good to be healthy in general. But there are certain wellness topics that we should be looking at and that we should be abreast of. So I know I'm not sharing my screen, but I'm going to read it. But in a reversal, the Trump administration restores funding for women's health study. So there are different studies that go on for women's health. And sometimes those studies, I don't want to say they're skewed, but you have to deal with the data that you're given. So if there's not many of one particular ethnicity compared to another, the studies might be biased. And so some of those studies we need to expand, right? Because your body might be different from someone else's depending on your ethnicity. It might depend on your geographic location, right? It might have something to do with your family's background. I know for me personally, I have hypothyroidism, but my mother has hyperthyroidism. But hypothyroidism actually runs in our family. So she's kind of the anomaly that happens. But in all cases, historically, Black women, or men have had issues with their thyroid. My question is why? I want to know more so the why than anything else. It's like, okay, I can't really fix my thyroid, but if I know why, maybe I can eat better, maybe I can exercise more, but there's always something that you can do, right, to be healthier. So the Trump administration is restoring financial support for a landmark study of women's health, and officials said Thursday, reversing a defunding decision that shocked medical researchers. So that's kind of crazy. It was defunded. These studies represent critical contributions to our better understanding of women's health, said a statement from Andrew Nixon, a spokesman for the Department of Health and Human Services. So, like I was saying before, some of these studies, I don't want to say they're skewed, but depending on the people that participate, that's the outcome you're going to get. But to hear that it was defunded, I'm not really shocked. Unfortunately, there are some areas where they're just not investing, but then everybody wants to, run around hair on fire, right? When something goes wrong. And then they want to blame, well, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough research. And I'm like, are you guys doing this on purpose? Like, are you punking us right now? Because you do this all the time. You want us to freak out about the fact that you don't have enough research, but when you are given the money to research, we don't get the information. So which is it? Like, I need you to do your job. That's where I'm at. I just need you to do your job. If you're going to get the money to do this, then let's do this. Let's make sure that we're not just giving lip service to the community of women out here that want to know, like, okay, if I'm born with a gene where I'm more susceptible to cancer, are there research, is there research out there to help me avoid chemotherapy or avoid having to maybe have a double mastectomy and have my ovaries removed, right? So that I can avoid the cancer, right? By getting a certain type of treatment, or is it unavoidable? These are questions that people need to know so they can make better medical decisions, because there are people that, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and they go into debt and they can't work because they have cancer. And if cancer is truly curable, why aren't we curing it? And this is going to sound harsh when I say it. It's because the people can't make money off of it. If they can't make money off of it, they're not going to put it in place to help you. This all comes back to the dollar. And that's a sad thing to say. But that's what this is about. This is about money and power, because they want you to be sick enough to not die, right? They don't want you dead, but they want you sick enough so that you're dependent on the medications that they provide you until you die. So they can make $200,000 or $300 or even close to $1 million off of you. They'll keep you alive long enough to make that money. And then they'll be like, well, if they're living longer, great. If they don't and they die, great. I've made my money off of them. And that's how we're being looked at. And I know a lot of people may find that that's harsh, but those are the facts. Okay. We need to start making demands on doctors, definitely on Health and Human Services. I'm going back to MAHA. We need to make our demands and say we expect better research for women, men, children. We don't want to just be throwing a pill and say, go home and take these every 2 hours and you'll feel better. Because for some people, they feel worse. You know, I was with somebody and we were hanging out over the weekend and they took a blood pressure medication and they felt horrible. So they stopped taking it and they felt better, which more than likely means that they don't have high blood pressure. Because whenever you take something and you feel worse and not better, that means it's not there to solve the issue. And it can create a worse issue that you don't even have. We need to start, let's say, maybe better doctors. And we have great doctors out there that are in the holistic space, but they're not covered under insurance. Why is that? Oh, that's right. You need somebody in place to just push pills that the pharmaceuticals companies have come up with. So you're using doctors literally as drug dealers in this space. That's what you're doing. They've become, the pharmaceutical companies are the pushers. You're the drug dealers, I guess. And the doctors are like your little minions that push out your medications. That's what we're living in. You might not like it. You might be upset that I'm even saying it, but it's true. And you know it's true. I know some of y'all are sitting back laughing right now. Yeah, because it's true. But these are the topics that we're going to be covering on Wednesday with Women and Wellness. And that is the end of the segment. It's going to run, roughly about, 10, 15 minutes. But I'll be having someone on every Wednesday. And I'm so looking forward to having somebody be my guest. So like I said, for next Wednesday, if you have anybody that you know or anyone that you might want to recommend, please send them my way. And with that, we're going to take a little bit of a break and we'll be right back.
All Sides has created a patented, fair, transparent process to rate the media bias of hundreds of news outlets and writers. We assess each media source and rate them as far left, lean left, center, lean right, or far right, allowing you to quickly identify different perspectives. All Sides uses many methodologies to determine bias, including the Blind Bias Survey, gathering people from all parts of the political bias spectrum and having them read and rate articles blindly, without telling them who wrote the article or which media outlet it came from. Then we take the average bias rating of several articles from a given media outlet for our final bias rating. Another powerful method we use is the editorial review. Focus groups of people with multiple political viewpoints who review the works of a media outlet and come to a consensus on its bias. We also look at credible third-party data, including academic research by top universities. Finally, what you say matters. We gather community feedback on our site every day, including hundreds of thousands of votes on our bias ratings. Our final bias ratings aren't determined by these votes, so they can't be gamed or falsified by any group. But we do analyze those votes for input and look for warning signs that our current bias ratings might be off. All Sides is constantly evolving our media bias engine. The more you participate, the better our ratings will be, and the better our news coverage will be. Go to allsides.com to get involved.
Hey guys, and this is Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Ashaki Nichols. Thank you for joining us. We are in our second hour and we will be here till 9 a.m. We will be airing 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday, Eastern Time. And then you can also catch the rebroadcast on our Roku channel under Let the Truth Be Told Network. So again, thank you guys for joining me. I know it's early. Hopefully, you're enjoying the content. Just let me know. I'm trying to deliver the news in a little bit of a different way and really just share with you information to equip you to be a better consumer of the news. And I talked a little bit earlier about tariffs, and I took some notes, and I just wanted to read through those and just read through the history of tariffs in the United States, because it's a big conversation. You know, the tariffs that have been that we've put out against other countries, and countries are rebutting back with the tariffs that we currently have now, and it's a standoff, with China. And so I just really want to equip you as the audience with more information about tariffs. So the history of tariffs in the United States in the early republic in the 1789 to 1860s, roughly, tariffs were the main source of federal revenue before the federal income tax was created in 1913. So a lot of people, they hear that 1913, I'm like, that number sounds familiar. Well, it should, because if you read the book, I guess, The Creature from Jekyll Island, that is when the Federal Reserve was actually formulated and put in place. And that'll be a whole different show that we can go into. But yeah, that is a very poignant time period. And the Tariff Act of 1789, signed by George Washington, was imposed duties on imports to fund the new government and protect emerging American industries. Henry Clay's American system in the 1820s to 30s advocated high tariffs to nurture domestic manufacturing. And the controversy about that is, in southern states reliant on imported goods and agricultural exports saw tariffs as favoring northern manufacturers. And this led to the nullification crisis in 1832. So the Southerners were like, well, the Northerners are getting more benefit from it than we are. We got to make this fair. Another point, the Civil War in early 20th century. So the Morrill Tariff in 1861 raised rates sharply to fund the Civil War. After the war, high tariffs remained, supported by the Republican Party to protect U.S. industries. And the McKinley Tariff in 1890 and the Dingley Act of 1897 set some of the highest tariff rates in U.S. history. And then, of course, we moved on to the Great Depression and the global trade collapse. So Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act in 1930 raised tariff on over 20,000 goods. Other countries retaliated, triggering a global trade war and worsening the Great Depression. This led to a shift in policy toward liberalization under FDR, with the Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act in 1934. So we've heard that word, right? Reciprocal trades. Post World War II into the 1990s, free trade era, the U.S. led the push for global free trade, establishing the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade in 1947, and eventually the World Trade Organization in 1995. Major agreements like NAFTA in 1994 and China's WTO ascension in 2001 followed accelerating globalization. So we can kind of see how we started tariffs being more independent. We had these wars, we went through a transition, and now here we are at NAFTA, right? I don't know if anybody remember Ross Perot when he ran for office. He said, you're going to hear this giant sucking sound. We are, everybody heard it, and here we are. So 2018 to present, the return of tariff policy. Under President Trump, the U.S. reinvigorating tariffs, particularly against China, steel, aluminum, electronics, invoking national security and unfair trade practices. Now, this is what President Trump has been talking about. He's like, I'm looking at these deals and they're not great for us. Everybody else is benefiting off of us, but we're not benefiting. So this is where the tariff conversation has come back up. Now, Section 232 and Section 301 tariffs became tools of U.S. trade enforcement. Now, Biden maintained many of the Trump era tariffs while aiding targeted new ones, right? So that would have been from the first time Trump was in office. So we had Trump, we had Biden, now we have Trump again. So there were tariff initiatives that Trump put in office, and Biden actually he maintained some of those. Quiet as it's kept. Again, news does not tell us everything. They just don't. They just don't want us to have this information, And those were more along the lines of Chinese electric vehicles and solar panels, and that would go into 2024 and 2025 because with the outgoing president, a lot of those initiatives that are locked in place, they'll play out this year, and then if Trump wants to change them, he will probably change them going into 2026 and beyond. So why use tariffs instead of taxing citizens? This was another note that I brought up to protect domestic industry. So tariffs discourage foreign competition by making imported goods more expensive. Okay. They help revitalize or preserve critical U.S. sectors such as steel, semiconductors, and auto manufacturing, right? Tariffs also will encourage domestic job growth. When foreign goods become less competitive, U.S. companies can increase market share, potentially hiring more workers. So there was when Trump initially came back into office and they said they were going to have all these companies do more investments here. There were some auto manufacturers and they said there were going to be some chip manufacturing companies. This is what we're talking about. We're trying to get more manufacturing here so that we can export more and make that money. And that's where some of the tariff taxation conversation comes in. So reducing the tax burden on individuals. So instead of raising income taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, tariffs raise revenue by taxing foreign sellers. Yeah, we're seeing how that's working out. So consumers may pay slightly more, but the burden is indirect. And it's often felt more by foreign exporters, which China, they're feeling the pinch. They are. It just is. I don't know if anybody's seen some of those TikTok videos going on out there, but they're feeling it. So leverage for better trade deals. Tariffs can serve as a negotiating tool, right? Which Donald Trump has used it in that way to compel trading partners to open their markets or respect intellectual property rights. National security and supply chain reliance. Tariffs can support industries deemed essential for national defense or pandemic preparedness, e.g., pharmaceuticals or rare earth elements, which they're trying to, like I said, we just read that article before where they're trying to, speed up the pharmaceutical manufacturing. Now, the counter arguments to tariffs is that there's higher consumer prices. Tariffs can raise costs for American consumers and businesses that rely on imported components. Now, the retaliation that is possible that we're seeing this back and forth, other countries may impose their own tariffs, hurting U.S. exports, which they have. So some of these countries have kind of capitulated, but other ones have been, like China, he's like, no, we're fighting back. We're not going to just do that. But they're kind of reliant on us buying their stuff. And if we stop buying their stuff because of the tax that's being imposed, where is their country at? Even though they manufacture as much stuff as they do, they're very reliant on the US dollar as opposed to other countries. They are. Now, the supply chain disruption. In some industries, imported inputs are essential and hard to replace domestically. So we can look at maybe chips, right? They make them in Taiwan. Taiwan gets their materials, from a neighboring country, or they might have all the materials there. But let's say here in the US, we might need to import some of those materials to make the same chips. If it becomes too expensive to do that, we have to charge more for the chips, but does that keep us as competitive in the marketplace? And so those are some of the counter arguments that are going on. So in conclusion, tariffs have historically been used to build US industry, protect jobs, and fund the government without directly taxing citizens. While not without drawbacks, tariffs, when applied strategically, can balance trade, boost national production, and reduce dependence on foreign markets, especially during geopolitical instability. And that's kind of where we're at right now, right? Like I don't want to say everybody's like freaked out, but there's a lot going on. We've got things going on with Ukraine and Russia. We've got Russia talking with China. I mean, there's always something globally that's happening, while simultaneously, President Trump is trying to get more manufacturers to come here to the United States so we can make things here, so we can actually have things domestically that we can export. We also have oil that we're using for export. So we do have some leverage in what we can do as a country. We just need to tap into it. And with that, we're going to just take a short break, and I'll see you on the other side.
At All Sides, we believe unbiased news doesn't exist. To get more clicks and make more money, media outlets often report news with a left, right, or sensational slant, either to suit their own agenda or because by telling us what we want to hear, we'll come back for more. Several news outlets in the center do a good job of portraying both sides equitably, but for the most part, American news media is biased. Bias isn't necessarily a bad thing. The key is to get multiple perspectives. But making matters worse, social media and internet search results are heavily filtered, showing us the most popular opinion or results that match our preferences and make us happy. That means we're all living in filter bubbles, where we're only exposed to viewpoints we already agree with, making us less informed and less tolerant of different people and ideas. At All Sides, we give bias ratings for hundreds of media outlets. By freeing people from filter bubbles and providing different perspectives, we can all be better equipped to understand the world and each other. So how do we do it? All Sides has created a patented, fair, transparent process to rate the media bias of hundreds of news outlets and writers. We assess each media source and rate them as far left, center, lean right, or far right, allowing you to quickly identify different perspectives. All Sides is constantly evolving our media bias engine. The more you participate, the better our ratings will be, and the better our news coverage will be. Go to allsides.com to get involved.
Hey everybody, welcome back, and thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. And I just want to give a shout out to someone and their organization. His name is Chase Smith, and he is the founder of Cash to Crypto Society. This is, I want to say it is a group, community, a society, really teaching individuals more about the crypto space and just how it's, how we can leverage it. I should say that. How we can really leverage crypto in the real world. Because I know a lot of people say, oh, it's fake money, it's a grift, how can we use it, how can we not? But Bitcoin is actually used very similar to a dollar. Now, I would never pay someone in a whole Bitcoin anything, because I think Bitcoin is worth like over $90,000 right now. So they do have a breakdown of Satoshis. So you might hear that in the crypto space. But definitely check out Cash to Crypto Society. You can join, you can explore. They have seminars. I actually went to a master class this past weekend and it was very enjoyable. They did have lunch, which was great. And it was an Atlantic Station here in Georgia. And so when you come here to the website, as you can see, they have a put online community where they learn about daily crypto news and updates. They also have an academy where you can learn more about crypto, wallets and exchanges, and even there's income opportunities. There's trading bots, NFTs, gaming, tokenizing, and more. So definitely when you get an opportunity, check out cash2cryptosociety.com and learn more about crypto. And with that, we're going to get into this next story. I know we were talking a lot about tariffs, which led me to another conversation and really looking at how do tariffs affect us with tax. Right now, if you can see my screen, Trump actually about, a little at the end of last month, so about a week ago, he actually floated an income tax cut to ease the tariff impact. So if prices go up and you're not paying the income tax, so to speak, now that doesn't take away FICA, okay, because FICA is always getting their money. And people are going to laugh because that was a term used. You're going to learn about FICA. FICA ain't nice sometimes, but your income tax, if you eliminate that, you would actually have more disposable income. So if something went up, you would actually be able to afford it. So that's the juxtaposement. That's what he's looking to do. Like I said, this was brought up in April. So President Trump floated a new income tax cut on Sunday as a way to mitigate the impact of his sweeping tariffs, which polls show Americans increasingly believe will lead to higher prices. When tariffs cut in, many people's income taxes will be substantially reduced, maybe even completely eliminated, Trump wrote in a post on his Truth Social platform on Sunday. Focus will be on people making less than $200,000 a year, he continued. Trump defended the strategy behind his steep tariffs in his post, maintaining massive numbers of jobs. Okay, I'm going to just stop there because I took some of my own notes because I really wanted to find out, is it legal to collect taxes? You hear many things out there. It's like, okay, so when did we start collecting these taxes? And I just read the history in our last segment. So that's how we got to, collecting taxes from people. And, a lot of these individuals that came over to America, they fled England because because of the taxation, Boston Tea Party, the whole party tax thing. So in a country that was founded on freedom of taxes, we're taxed habitually. Like, it's really sad. Like, we need to figure this out. We need to regroup and go back to it. I mean, I kind of like the plan, but I want to read from some of my notes. Constitutionally, under Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, it gives Congress the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay debts and provide the defense and general welfare of the U.S. Okay, so the taxes collected are to help protect us, right? Okay, all right, I get it, but I want you to stop losing $6 billion and not know where it's coming from, Pentagon. Pete Hegseth, dude, find the money. We just need you to find the money. That's all. Like, if my taxes are going to defend me, I have no problem with that. But don't tell me you lost $6 billion. That was a tangent. Let's get back to it. Now, the 16th Amendment in 1913 clarified Congress's power to levy income taxes directly on individuals without appropriating them among the states, which I always found that interesting. It's like, okay, you can collect taxes on this directly without appropriating them among the states. It's interesting. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes and incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states. I just find it weird. It's like, okay, y'all have way too much control. Like, I want you to do good things, Congress. I just need you because we give you guys a lot of authority. Now, according to the Internal Revenue Source Code, Title 26 U.S. Code outlines federal tax laws and is enforced by the Internal Revenue Service. The Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld the legal and federal taxation, including income taxes, corporate taxes, and estate taxes. Now, Donald Trump wants to eliminate the income tax just for a certain tax bracket. So it wouldn't apply to anybody. So if you're making $500,000 a year, you're still going to pay income tax. It's only for people making less than $200,000 a year. So this doesn't really affect everybody the same way. And I think that's the conversation that we need to have because, people read the title and they're like, oh, yay, no more income tax. It doesn't mean for everybody. So if you're making $350,000 a year, you're paying income tax. You're not exempt. It's only for people making less than $200,000 a year, right? Now, the other question is, could Trump eliminate federal taxes and replace them with tariffs? And it's unlikely. Presidents cannot unilaterally end federal taxes. Only Congress has the power to repeal or amend the tax code. A president can propose tax reforms, but eliminating income taxes entirely would require congressional approval, which is politically improbable given the budget impact, right? So tariffs alone can't fund the government. In 2023, the federal government raised $2.2 trillion from income taxes, $1.7 trillion from payroll taxes, and only $80 billion from tariffs. So even if tariffs were raised dramatically, they could not match the scale of revenue from current federal taxes without causing massive inflation and trade retaliation. And we're seeing a lot of that happening right now, right? Where China is just like, nope, absolutely not. But what Trump did was by having this tariff back and forth with some countries, we have a better trade. We have free trade. It's back and forth, right? With some, he was able to bring down the percentage that we were paying because we were paying such a high percentage in that tariff, where he's got it back down to equal. So now people are paying more their fair share. So if we are, as a country, United States, paying 10% in tariffs and somebody else is, 5%, it's like, okay, you've got to have yours at 10%, or we can bring them both down to 5%. So we're actually doing better amongst one another. Now, the other thing is, the economic fallout could be severe. A tariff-only model could skyrocket consumer prices, which we talked about, could trigger international trade wars. It could harm U.S. exporters, and it could cause shortages of key goods like electronics, medical supplies. But again, if we're making our own medical supplies and we're making our own electronics within our country and we're manufacturing within our country, we're better off. Like I said, we need to be more interdependent as opposed to dependent. And I want to say that should be for every country. No country should be so dependent upon another that if they don't get certain goods and services, that their whole system falls apart. Like, that's just not a good way to be. You should not be in that situation. And I want us as Americans in America to be able to have the leverage, right? That we can actually be stronger as a country when we're making our own things, as opposed to relying on somebody to send us a wheel that we need for the vehicle that we're manufacturing here. We should be making the wheels and tires ourselves here and have that option. So if something happens to that manufacturing country that we were getting imports from, we're like, oh, that's fine. We can just go to this this company here in our country and continue the process without slowing down, without missing a beat. Now, some of the legal challenges and global commitments. The U.S. is part of a World Trade Organization, which we are, and Trump's been trying to get us out of a lot of those things. I think we're out of the Paris Accord, and he may have gotten us out of, what was that one? The WHO and some other ones. But again, and we are part of the World Trade Organization and multiple trade agreements. Unilaterally imposing high tariffs across the broad could violate these agreements and lead to legal disputes or sanctions, right? So, yeah, the United States is a corporation and we engage in a lot of business overseas. And so with that, okay, if you wanted to go back to that business model, according to the notes I took, it's gonna be difficult. It's gonna, change a lot of things. And so, yes, collecting federal taxes is fully legal and backed by the Constitution. And over a century of law and precedent, Trump cannot unilaterally eliminate federal taxes, though he may impose replacing some taxes with tariffs as a part of a broader economic plan. So, like I said, and when I say federal taxes, I'm talking about FICA too. I'm not just talking about the income tax. I'm talking about income, FICA, as a whole, right? He can't do that, but he can put together a proposal, which, like I said, he did with, saying that people that make under 200,000 a year, yeah, let's give them a break. But the people that make $200,001, you're in a different bracket. You're not 200,000 and under. But that's a proposal. And I think it's definitely doable. So while tariffs can supplement revenue, they are not a viable sole source, right, to fund a $6 trillion federal budget without crippling in economic consequences. So it's definitely just looking at, okay, yeah, we could leverage the tariffs, like I said, and that's what President Trump has done. He's talking with China, and there's still that back and forth. And I think, the president of China, he's going to have to come and have a conversation with Trump, and they will come to some type of agreement. I don't think that it will be zero tariffs, absolutely not. But I think it will get down to where it's not 125%, or I think it's like 145%. It's something ridiculous that they're doing this whole back and forth. But when China unfortunately starts to suffer because they're very reliant upon us buying their things. When that really starts to hit them economically, I don't think they're going to have choice but to come down and really come to the table and, negotiate so that going forward, we have more respect for one another as countries. And we are working together to make things better for the general public, right? It's just, like I said, I find it fascinating with all these governments. We elect people and we put them in place to work for us, and they get there and they stop working for us and they're working for wherever's in their pocket. And you can tell by the way they vote, by the laws they pass, that it's no longer about the people that they're supposed to be serving. And so those are things that we need to, like I said, we need to hold their feet to the fire on this. And we need to make sure that they're working for us. We don't work for them. We are not there for them to just use and abuse. They are there to serve us as the American public. With that, I'm going to take a short break, and I'll see you guys on the other side.
At All Sides, we believe unbiased news doesn't exist. To get more clicks and make more money, media outlets often report news with a left, right, or sensational slant, either to suit their own agenda or because by telling us what we want to hear, we'll come back for more. Several news outlets in the center do a good job of portraying both sides equitably, but for the most part, American news media is biased. Bias isn't necessarily a bad thing. The key is to get multiple perspectives. But making matters worse, social media and internet search results are heavily filtered, showing us the most popular opinion or results that match our preferences and make us happy. That means we're all living in filter bubbles, where we're only exposed to viewpoints we already agree with, making us less informed and less tolerant of different people and ideas. At All Sides, we give bias ratings for hundreds of media outlets. By freeing people from filter bubbles and providing different perspectives, we can all be better equipped to understand the world and each other. So how do we do it? All Sides has created a patented, fair, transparent process to rate the media bias of hundreds of news outlets and writers. We assess each media source and rate them as far left, center, lean right, or far right, allowing you to quickly identify different perspectives. All Sides is constantly evolving our media bias engine. The more you participate, the better our ratings will be, and the better our news coverage will be. Go to allsides.com to get involved.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me this morning on Unfiltered Vision News. My name is Dr. Shakinoni Nichols, and I am the host of Unfiltered Vision News. Actually, that will be airing on the Let the Truth Be Told network, so you can catch a rebroadcast of this show on Roku currently under Let the Truth Be Told network. And just look for Unfiltered Vision News, and you will see our logo there, and you can go ahead and see other episodes that we have up there recorded. But I'm really looking forward to launching the network, so we'll be going live soon on the network. We're just putting everything in place, but yes, you can catch the rebroadcast on Let the Truth Be Told network on Roku. So now I want to get a little bit more into Governor DeSantis and the property tax relief, not sales tax cuts, is Florida's priority. So this actually, let's see, the story is like from March, and it was something that, you kind of hear about things, but like, let me look into that a little bit more. So apparently, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, he proposes a $1,000 tax break for household property owners instead of the $5 billion sales tax cut proposed by the House. Right? DeSantis argues that property tax relief directly benefits Florida residents, while sales tax cuts also benefit tourists. Right? DeSantis aims to eliminate the state's portion of property taxes used for public schools, known as the required local effort, and use state reserves to cover the cost for 1 year, instead of a $5 billion cut in sales taxes as proposed. So I'm like, wow. Okay. So, not the worst thing he's done, right? I know people are like, oh no, the taxes used for schools. It's like, they're still going to get money, but they're going to have to use it wisely. They can't just lose $6 million and say, we don't know what happened to it. Okay. I keep talking about the money that these organizations keep losing. They're losing money. I don't understand why people aren't losing their jobs and going to prison. But this is what's happening. So I did a little bit of research, and currently Florida does not have a state income tax and relies heavily upon property taxes to fund essential services such as public education, emergency services, and infrastructure. Eliminating property taxes would create a sustainable revenue shortfall, right? And estimates suggest that to compensate for this loss, the state needs to significantly increase their sales taxes. Okay. So, from the story I just I'm showing you right now, it's like, okay, in order to get a break, you know, he was like, let's give them a break instead of doing the sales tax cut, because if they have more money in their pockets to spend, even if the sales tax is a little bit higher, they'll be able to afford it and it'll shake itself out pretty much. Now, the pros and cons of this model. So if you were to eliminate property taxes, so the relief for homeowners would be, okay, eliminate property taxes could reduce the financial burden on homeowners, particularly those on fixed incomes, people that have Social Security. I'm sure you've heard of maybe people that are widowed or people that rely heavily on Social Security. They sometimes end up losing their homes because they can no longer afford the property tax, but they own their home, but they're still paying property taxes on their house. Like, they shouldn't have to. Like, there are two things that, in my opinion, once you buy your house and once you turn a certain age, you shouldn't have to pay property taxes, period. You shouldn't. And the reason why is because, as you get elderly, yeah, you may be on a fixed income, right? But if you own the house, why are you paying property taxes again? It's like, what? And people say, well, it's for services. It's for, your fire tech and your schools and, the roads being taken care of. I'm like, okay, but we also pay other taxes within our state and cities that should be paying for those things. They shouldn't be so heavily reliant on property taxes. And I think that's what's happened in our country. It's like, we get taxed so much we don't realize how much we're taxed, and we really are overtaxed in the United States. We pay taxes on everything. So just like I said, my opinion, there's a certain class of people. If you buy your house or if you're a certain age, you shouldn't have to pay taxes anymore. Simplified tax structure relying more on sales tax could simplify the tax system and potentially boost consumer spending. Now, the cons with this would be regressive impact of sales taxes are generally considered regressive, right? Disproportionately affecting low and middle income individuals who spend a larger portion of their income on taxable goods, right? Like, maybe going out to eat, or a car, or a television. These are things that are taxed. They're not, when I lived in California, they didn't tax food because I didn't think they were supposed to tax food anywhere, but they do tax food here in Georgia. So we do pay a sales tax on everything, literally. But what they're saying is, if you were to eliminate property taxes, okay, yay, but it's going to bring it up for other people that, are low to middle income. And if they don't own a house, right, they're not going to see that benefit. So they're not going to have that disposable income. They may live in an apartment, but at that time, they're not paying property taxes. So I don't know. I think the jury's still out on that one. I could see it both ways. But funding for essential services, like I talked about earlier, property taxes are stable sources of revenue for local governments. Eliminating them could jeopardize funding for essential services unless alternative revenue sources are secured. Now, for that, there still are other taxes, unfortunately, that could be implied, right? But that would come more from the state, in my opinion. Now, in Florida, if you eliminate state tax and you eliminate property tax and you're just, relying maybe on a sales tax, or even because they're I don't want to call them an entertainment state, but they have a lot of hospitality type things going on. They got Disney, people vacation there. So they're one of those states that they have extra revenue coming in for those types of things. If you don't live in a state like that, your life might look a little bit different. But, let's say they eliminate the sales tax, they eliminate property tax, they bring up sales tax that you pay. You could go from maybe 6 to 10%. Okay, well, in that 10%, could they disseminate some of that overflow to the different cities and counties, right? Because cities do collect a city tax. Would they add an extra city tax onto goods and services? I think that's really the question. It's like, where does the money come from if we're not going to collect it this way? But again, I really think there's been an abuse of property taxes in some instances. Like my husband and I, it's like our house, it has gone up in value since we've lived here, but our taxes have almost tripled since we've lived here. Now, services have not gotten that much better, and a lot of people say, well, if your house increases, then your your property taxes increase, but they shouldn't. That's all I'm saying. There should be a flat rate. I think these cities and municipalities have gotten so bloated on collecting property taxes that they've become more dependent on it. And they really haven't used the monies properly. And that's just my opinion. It's like, if you're going to charge property taxes, there should be a flat rate. If you've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, that's what the taxes are, and that's it. If you've got a 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom, that's it. You can't just say, well, your house is on the corner and it's on a hill and it's 2 stories and that's it. No more of that, because then it's subjective. So even though if I'm paying a certain rate, the person that's in my community is paying a completely different rate, but they may have the same house, but it might be painted differently, or they might have a pool and I don't, right? Or we both don't have a pool and the house is just slightly designed differently, and because of that, there's a different rate. Stop that. Stop it. One rate for the size of your house, and that's it. And that's how it should be. But because they've almost turned our federal government into more like a business model, and when I say that, they're really using it to siphon off of people as opposed to actually being good stewards of the finances to make people's lives better. And that is really the job of our government. They're there to support, they're there to maintain laws. That's why we have our police, but they're really just not doing a great job what they've been given. And again, that comes back to electing better people. And with that, I just really want to remind everybody, when all of these things are going on, definitely look up towards heaven, because your redemption is drawing near. And with that, please make sure to check out the USA Redemption Party at usaredemptionparty.com. We are looking for candidates to be servants of the people, not politicians. And we're also looking for members of the party to join and help us to grow the party. So again, check us out at usaredemptionparty.com. And thank you so much for joining me this morning on an episode of Unfiltered Vision News. We will be back tomorrow. And tomorrow is going to be Mighty Men Thursday. And I'm really looking forward to that segment where I'll have a special guest on our show. But again, you guys, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate everybody out there for taking time out of their day to hear me rant and ramble about the news and just show you different things that I found that we really need to be aware of and be better equipped as we go out amongst our day. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you tomorrow.